We spend the energetic years of our early life sprinting through an endless labyrinth of ambition, driven by a quiet, pervasive terror of falling behind. We measure our days by the noise of our achievements, constantly checking our pace against the shadows of those running beside us. Every unexpected delay feels like a tragic defeat, and every minor setback threatens to unravel our fragile sense of identity. Yet, time possesses a gentle, silent gravity that slowly strips away this frantic urgency as the years accumulate. The Stoics understood that youth is naturally turbulent because the ego believes it must conquer the entire world to secure its place. As the autumn of life quietly sets in, the fierce winds of ambition give way to a profound, unshakable still air. You begin to realize that the race was mostly an illusion manufactured by a restless mind, trying to prove its worth. True wisdom arrives when you finally stop running and realize you were already home. In the spring of our lives, we treat the opinions of strangers as if they were sacred scriptures carved into stone. We waste countless hours rehearsing conversations, curating our public image, and agonizing over how our choices might be judged by the crowd. This invisible burden turns every room into a courtroom where we sit as both the anxious defendant and the harsh judge. But Seneca observed that human applause is as fleeting as a passing breeze, forgotten by the very people who offered it moments later. As the decades soften our perspective, the urgent desire to please the world naturally dissolves into a quiet indifference. We look back with a gentle smile at the immense energy we squandered trying to fit into molds that were never designed for us. The freedom of aging lies in reclaiming your sovereign mind from the tyranny of public opinion. Peace is the quiet space that opens up when you no longer care to be understood by everyone. Youth is a relentless pursuit of control, an obsessive attempt to engineer every circumstance to match our precise expectations. We lay out intricate blueprints for our careers, our relationships, and our futures, treating any deviation as an unbearable crisis. When fate inevitably disrupts our fragile plans, we burn with anxiety and mourn the loss of what we believed was rightfully ours. Epictetus taught that our profoundest suffering comes not from external events, but from our arrogant demand that reality obey our desires. With time, the repeated tides of life wear down this stubborn resistance, teaching us the quiet art of yielding to the inevitable. We watch our carefully built castles crumble, only to realize that the open sky above was far more vast than any ceiling we constructed. Seniority brings the supreme relief of realizing you were never meant to be the master architect of the universe. Serenity begins the moment you stop fighting the flow of the river. When we are young, every emotional pain feels like an unprecedented, world-ending tragedy that will scar us forever. A broken heart, a failed venture, or a sudden betrayal can trap the mind in a claustrophobic room with no visible exit. We lack the long memory needed to understand that the human spirit is remarkably elastic, built to endure and regenerate. Marcus Aurelius frequently urged himself to view human life from a high mountain, observing how empires rise and fall like waves upon the shore. As the years grant us this panoramic vantage point, we recognize that our worst days were merely brief, stormy chapters in a much longer book. The dramatic crisis that once kept us awake at night shrinks into a tiny, quiet milestone on the long road behind us. Experience teaches us that we have survived every single dark night fate has thrown our way so far. The calm of age is born from knowing that this too shall pass. We spend decades hoarding possessions and collecting titles, convinced that a crowded house and a heavy resume will protect us from vulnerability. We build high walls out of material wealth, hoping to keep the cold winds of uncertainty at bay forever. Yet, the Stoic path reminds us that true security is an internal condition, completely untouchable by external fortune or physical decay. As time gently strips away our physical strength and worldly status, it reveals what was always truly valuable within us. The senior soul learns to travel light, shedding the heavy baggage of unnecessary desires and artificial status symbols. You come to see that a warm cup of tea, a clear conscience, and a peaceful room are worth more than all the gold in the world. True wealth is not having a great deal, but having learned how little you actually need to be whole. The anxieties of youth are powered by the illusion of infinite time, a deceptive feeling that we have forever to resolve our conflicts and build our legacies. We postpone peace, pushing our happiness into a distant future when every goal will finally be achieved. We live in a perpetual state of waiting, treating the present moment as a mere waiting room for our actual life to begin. But the practice of memento mori, remembering our mortality, is not a somber exercise. It is the ultimate tool for liberation. As the horizon of life draws closer, the illusion shatters, leaving behind a sharp, beautiful clarity about what truly matters. The urge to hold long grudges, engage in petty arguments, or chase hollow honors evaporates instantly under the light of our finitude. Death ceases to be a terrifying predator and becomes a quiet, wise guide pointing back to the gift of today. Every breath in late life becomes a sacred, unrepeatable treasure dot in our early years. We mistake quietness for emptiness, filling every spare moment with noise, action, and constant stimulation. We fear being left alone with our thoughts, using the busy work of the world to drown out the quiet questions of our own souls. But as the external volume of life naturally lowers with age, we are invited into a deeper relationship with silence. The Stoics cultivated this internal sanctuary, knowing that true contentment is found in the unruffled depths of one's own mind. In the quiet hours of a senior life, silence transforms from a cold void into a warm, restorative presence. You no longer need to be entertained, validated, or occupied by the world to feel completely at ease. You sit softly with your history, your memories, and your breath, needing nothing more than the quiet grace of existing. The deepest conversations of your life will happen in total stillness. We spend much of our youth attempting to fix, correct, and reform every flawed person who crosses our path. We burn with righteous frustration when others act foolishly, selfishly, or unfairly, believing it is our personal duty to set them right. This constant moral crusade keeps our nervous system in a state of chronic irritation, blinding us to our own faults. Seneca wisely observed that humans will act according to their nature, and expecting a fool to act wisely is like expecting a fig tree to bear grapes. The passage of time softens this harsh idealism into a profound, compassionate acceptance of human frailty. We recognize that we too have been foolish, blind, and mistaken countless times along our own winding journey. Senior serenity arrives when you drop the heavy gavel of judgment and let people simply be who they are. Mercy is the quiet maturity that replaces the need to be right. The fierce fire of youthful pride convinces us that asking for help or showing vulnerability is a fatal mark of weakness. We wear a heavy armor of self-reliance, hiding our fears, our tears, and our limitations behind a stern, stoic facade. We suffer in deep isolation, believing that true strength requires us to stand completely unbroken against every storm. But the deeper, mature stoicism teaches us that acknowledging our limitations is the highest form of honesty and reason. Age naturally softens this rigid pride, teaching us the quiet beauty of interdependence and gentleness. We learn to accept the helping hand, the shared tear, and the physical frailties that connect us to the rest of humanity. True strength is not an impenetrable wall, but a heart that remains open despite its scars. There's a holy peace in finally laying down the heavy shield you were never meant to carry. In our early years, we view our personal history as a chaotic sequence of mistakes, wrong turns, and tragic miscalculations. We spend immense mental energy wishing we could go back and rewrite key scenes, choosing different doors and smoother paths. But as the long narrative of life nears its conclusion, the subtle interconnectedness of all your experiences becomes breathtakingly clear. The Stoic concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate, invites us to see that every heartbreak and failure was a necessary architect of our current depth. The painful detours were not wasted time. They were the precise valleys required to cultivate your resilience, empathy, and wisdom. Without those dark nights of the soul, you would lack the quiet strength that sits so gracefully in your heart today. Look back upon your winding path with total gratitude, for not a single tear was shed in vain. Everything happened exactly as it needed to bring you here. Youth lives in a perpetual state of emotional reaction, tossed about like a small boat on a stormy sea by every passing piece of news or personal conflict. A single harsh word can ruin a day, and an unexpected complication can trigger hours of internal panic. We lack the inner anchor that keeps the soul steady when the external winds blow with fierce intensity. But as the decades pass, the mind gradually learns to build an impenetrable inner citadel that protects us from emotional chaos. We learn to insert a spacious pause between the external event and our internal response, choosing reason over knee-jerk panic.